Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
Shit. What?
Did we screw up?
Yeah, we did. It's fine. Don't worry about it. We're just going to roll with the punches. It's me, Daniel,
Okay. And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf. And believe it or not, we did prepare for that.
Yeah.
And we fumbled
Don't
it.
say that. People will think we were trying to do a bit. That was just
I'm
a
joking.
mistake.
We're not doing a bit.
It's fine.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, there was no bit. But this is a special episode. We do have a friend of the podcast and friend in real life, Michele, on.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to add
Hi,
clapping.
guys.
Hello. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. You may remember her from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen episode that we did last year while we were revisiting comic book movies. And she's back to talk about what you saw in the title, Black Widow, the 2021 film.
No,
I have thoughts.
Did we officially call it the 2021 film?
It came out in 2021.
Released,
It is a film.
It's a
I'm
film
going
we've
with it.
waited for over a year for. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people might argue a bit longer than that. But
many people would argue much longer than that, for sure.
Michele, your thoughts?
Well, how did you guys feel hearing the Avengers theme come on in the beginning? Like, I missed that sound so much.
Yeah, I wish I saw it in a theater for that, but I did feel like, you know what, like I'm used to being at home for Marvel stuff, not that Marvel movies, but I'm like, this is good. And I think that might also paint how I enjoyed the movie, which was like, yeah, I'm used to this at home now. But I take it was a big deal for you to like hear it again.
Oh, I missed it so much. I'm so used to going at least once a year to the theater to see the new Marvel movie, and it was missed. And I mean, I feel like we've bonded in the past about our complaints about the lights not going off during the previews, and it feels like karma that we've just been banished from the theater for so long.
Yeah, I can't complain about it anymore. I don't know. That's what I get for complaining too much.
Yeah, and just to fill you all in for our international audience base, yeah, we're still pretty much, I guess, in lockdown, despite the fact that we're not. I guess nothing's opening up properly, and no
the day after this comes out, movie theaters will be open. But
there you go. We had the full Disney Plus experience.
Yes,
all three of us.
Yeah, I guess that's how we watched it. So yeah, Black Widow. Were you like excited for this movie? Because I feel like all the excitement I had for this movie ahead of time was gone when they're like, it's in between Civil War and Infinity War. I was like, oh, I don't care about that.
For me, well, I watched it with my sister, who I'll talk about a little bit more because it's prevalent to the story, but Black Widow was always like her favorite character, and Black Widow really had to grow on me. But kind of her excitement about this character, it was infectious, and I just, I mean, we'll get into it, but it really, it's so great to see her finally get her own movie after the kind of dubious, piece of ass introduction that she got in Iron Man 2, and just the way that she's grown from there.
Obviously long overdue, very excited for it, but I have to echo those sentiments with you, Daniel, in the sense where the moment we found out it was a book-ended movie, that there's a clear beginning and clear end to where this character is going to go. It's the same issue we run into with the Han Solo movie. It's like, well, we just watched this character die in a previous movie, and now you're reintroducing a younger version. In this case, the same actress, the same chronologically part of the timeline, but it's still difficult to get excited over something like that.
I don't even know if I cared about the whole her being dead already. I think going into it, my problem was like, yeah, she's talked about Budapest. I don't really like that was a nice like offhand joke. I don't really need to like see it. So to the extent of Solo, yeah, like I didn't need to see the Kessel Run. I didn't need to
Mhm.
see how he got his vest or his blaster, and I definitely didn't need to see how she got this vest that I have like one movie's worth of like affinity for.
Yep.
And I don't know like how what she did in between. But I guess here's where I got to the good part is I was like, I genuinely like the story they told. I thought they made use of that timeline very well. It didn't feel like they were just trying to fill in gaps. I actually felt like I got more out of not only Natasha but her sister Yelena. Like I like it introduced me to a new character that I'm like, oh, I want to see more of that. Like I genuinely
Mhm.
enjoyed that. Like, yes, they are filling in some holes, but they actually gave me something I didn't know I was going to get.
Mhm. That you didn't know you wanted either, or that you just didn't know you couldn't
Oh
what
no,
you
I
were gonna
always
get.
know I want to like see characters I like or get
I
more
see.
out of them, but
Mhm.
I didn't know they were going to do that. I thought they were really just like, I don't know, we got to do a Black Widow movie. Like, we'll talk
Yeah,
about her back in the
I'll
day.
be honest with you. Like, I really genuinely thought like that was Marvel's way of like being like, and this will shut everyone up. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? The people that have been like clamoring for a Black Widow movie. It's like, you gotta tell this, you gotta tell this. Like, okay, shut the hell up now. We got a Black Widow movie. And it's actually the thing to me, and it's a good movie. Like for me to not be excited over it because I'm like, oh, the character, this is the beginning, this is the end. We've talked about Budapest so much. And like, I believe there was one episode where I recorded with you beforehand where we were talking about Black Widow and like us being excited about learning what happens in Budapest.
if that would have been you, I definitely
That
wasn't
would have been
excited.
me.
Yeah,
And yeah, and now that I see it, I'm like, oh, I'm sure I want to walk that back a little bit. I'm not sure that mattered as much as it did,
no,
to be perfectly
it
honest.
does not matter.
I am
Uh,
glad they didn't actually recreate that whole thing, though,
no,
and that
I
it was
didn't need
told
that.
through dialogue more than anything else.
Michelle, you said
Yeah.
your sister's like enjoyment of the character was infectious. Did you end up actually liking the movie though?
I gotta be honest, I'm obsessed with it. Like
Okay.
Mm.
I love it. And I hope that like I'm always you guys always give me like a new perspective on things, but I'm really into it and I have a lot of good feelings towards it.
I'm
Mm.
glad because I really liked it, and I was like, oh man, like if I'm the only one that liked this movie even a little bit, this is gonna be an awkward episode. But yeah, like you said, you had some notes and like some good stuff. Wow, I would love to dig in at this
Now
point.
let's dig.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would just like to say that the whole like first part of the movie up until the end of the title sequence, I thought was so good, and it
Mhm.
just pulled me, and it just
Mhm.
I didn't know what to expect, and I had kind of stopped watching previews and stuff because I was tired of
Smart.
getting all excited over the
Smart.
we just didn't know when we were going to get it for
Mhm.
so long, and so it was like, oh, this is the tone of this movie, and
I felt the same way.
um
Mhm.
yeah, like the family in the beginning, it really, the American Pie song set the tone for me
Mhm.
of like this this song about kind of the death of the American dream with all this American symbolism as this Russian spy family is escaping the police or whatever it was. The only thing like that I really had to note that occurred to me when they get to the plane and then you kind of see Alexi like flip some trailer
Yeah.
or something, and
Mhm.
what it made me
Mhm.
think of was the Hulk, and for me it gave a bit of context as to why Natasha had such an affinity for the Hulk.
I did not even think about that once.
Oh, that's interesting. I never
To
even
have
thought
such
about
a strong,
that.
like physically strong father figure that
who's
I
who's
guess
scary, but he's also kind of this lovable oaf
mhm,
figure,
yeah,
as we'll come to know
Mhm.
throughout the movie.
I definitely
That's
yeah.
so wildly interesting. The daddy issues being brought up in there. That's wild.
Well,
I never
I
even
don't
thought
know
about
if
that.
I mean that might I guess yeah, maybe I just took it as like that was a positive experience she had with someone
Mhm.
that was like this big scary oaf type person.
Mhm.
Um I mean, for a bit, I guess 3 years, that was a positive experience for her. So maybe she found that
Yep.
again in Bruce. But yeah, I genuinely didn't think of anyone else but Captain America, because I'm like, well, yeah, it looks like she's used to having super soldiers around. That explains why she's like close with Steve. But yeah, the way he displays his strength is way less Steve and way more like Hulk, just bruise. Like he even says, like, I'm just the muscle. Like I just go through it. So yeah, definitely not something I ever considered, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of that show, The Americans. So they had me right away when I was just like, yeah, this is just like The Americans. This is great. I mean, I just rewatched it and I was like, I went into the second watch thinking I wanted more of the American stuff, but I'm like, no, I feel like I got enough of it. Like I think they did a good job going through it at the beginning to set this tone.
Yeah, to me, like that the American imagery in the beginning was like, oh god, this is like, that was an eye roll for me. I'm like, okay, I get it. We're there's the football field, there's the marching band. Like, yeah, they're trying to replicate lyrics of the song. Cool, but it was just so on the nose and so like pro-American propaganda stuff, where it's like when you see Spider-Man, you're like, of course he's going to land on the American flag before he zips off in the sunset. You know what I mean? Like that kind of pro-America imagery.
I didn't think it was pro-American imagery. I think the idea was this is a very stressful, scary time for them, and they're surrounded by all the things that everyone else would be. Like, I think it was actually an indictment that anyone who doesn't fit into that mold that you're seeing, the football stuff, would be terrified and on the run.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's more what that imagery was about, and less, hey, way to go, America.
Interesting.
I think all of that stuff is that
totally took it as, yeah.
I think the timing of it, the fact that they're on the run,
like the idea that, right.
But like, I get what you're saying, but I took that definitely as like, this should be comforting, but obviously as the audience, you're uneasy, and you can obviously connect with how scared this fake family is right now, because this is for their life. So like, nothing about what's going on is comforting other than the connection they have inside that car.
Yeah. It's true. It's even the song that she chooses to play. I'm like, yeah, to your point, Michelle, you're right. It's a song it's a very popular song about the demise of American dreams. You know, it's like when you listen to American Woman and you're like, yeah, this is a great song, and you're like, this is a song making fun of this. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, you're not getting the full meaning of it. And that's a great mirror flip for those images to be comforting to people that are in the zeitgeist of that. But like, to me,
in the circle thing.
Yeah, to me, like, watching that was like, oh, this is horrifying. This is cultish, and this is like a thing. But you know,
yeah, I think that's the point, though. Like, I do think that's the feeling you're supposed to take away from it.
Fair enough. That's why my heavy eye roll during that scene. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad we all agree the beginning is good. I keep throughout the movie, like, just as we talk about the Red Guardian, Alexi, I always forget that he actually is a super soldier. I just keep it like, anytime he does something strong, I'm like, oh yeah. I'm so used to him just being a nice father figure, though. But oh yeah, also he's a superhero. Forgot about that. Yeah. But yeah, I think, yeah, that it was especially during the credit sequence where I was just like, wow, like, it feels different than another Marvel movie. Like, just the imagery of those girls being, and I'm not women, like girls being locked up and coming out of like, I don't know why I can't think of the word anymore, but like the shipping yard stuff,
the shipping containers and stuff like that.
Like showing up in shipping containers and being torn away from it. Like, we already know that Yelena and Natasha get torn away from each other and stuff like that. It felt like, wow, yeah, this is different. This feels like a different Marvel movie.
I agree. And like the use of the female cover of It Smells Like Teen Spirit overlaying those images of these girls having their childhood and teenagehood ripped away from them. And it's this song about like teenage rebellion and that sort of, I mean, it's unsure what it's actually about, but I mean, I feel like that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
And it was just very haunting, and like, oh, this going to be the darkest installment of this series to date?
It definitely sets the tone, and I think it sets the right tone. for the movie. I definitely think it's like, oh yeah, this isn't going to be a fun. Even I guess even Far From Home was got dark at times, but like this isn't going to be as funny or fun as that. Like this is, if it came out when it was supposed to come out, it would have set the tone of like, oh, like this is going to be a serious or more serious movie. It's going to be pretty intense.
Yeah, especially because the intended release date and when the actual release date was obviously paralleling like the sex trafficking industry and all that kind of stuff, and the stuff that was revealed around then was just like horrifying. So like that would have been like that added on to me is like all the viewing experience. I'm like, holy crap, this is just so heavy. I'm so glad that you're right. Like there's lighthearted moments that we'll talk about later on that don't actually take away from the seriousness of this movie, which I really, really appreciate. Because I'm like, this is not a movie where we're supposed to be joking around with, because everyone's clearly understanding that this is about more. It's about sex trafficking more than anything else.
It is about controlling women's bodies. That's definitely. I don't know if they're gonna put, because we know what the Black Widow program is, and it's not sex trafficking. So it is about the control of women's bodies, and I think that's why I'm a little put off when people are like, the villain isn't that good. Like I know they're talking about Taskmaster, but I've heard people like take like Dreykov as like a weak villain. I'm like, I feel like you don't actually understand what he was doing. Like he was controlling them, like he was cutting into their brains and controlling them. Like I'm sure we're gonna go into this in a chronological order, but like it is very important that he is this hands-off, quote unquote, bad guy that is controlling all these women and people's bodies in general. Down to the pheromones thing, but like I'm like, no, it's a pretty big deal of a villain. That's not like, yeah, sorry he didn't shoot anything out of his hands, but like it's a big deal. Like that is more realistic of a villain that the world faces.
Yeah, and the real stakes aspect of that villain was so by far haunting to me than anything else, because to me this is like the scariest villain you can ever have is a wolf in sheep's clothing, because those, and I'm glad you brought this up, Michelle, those beginning images with the women in the shipping, the young girls in the shipping containers and being obviously transported against their will, losing their innocence, but also to have General Dreykov, I think I'm saying his name right, but the images of him photoshopped into prominent political figures at the time, like Bill Clinton was there. There's a lot. So this is a guy that's like, they're expressing that upper echelon of society's acceptance of this person while he's still doing this kind of stuff, right? It makes you think of what's going on, because like he is Epstein. Like that's one of the things I was going to be like, he's a stand-in for Epstein in this situation. That's what makes it so scary to me, is the fact that like he didn't kill himself. We know that. But yeah, it's the scariest thing, like a wolf in sheep's skin. Yeah. This was,
and it's a scary thing that has been kind of like ignored, I guess, in the MCU thus far. Like they kind of don't really address that treatment of women. It like even in Captain Marvel, it's kind of like, I mean, I'd have to refresh my memory on that movie, but it's kind of like girl power. Like they don't want her to be a pilot, and she's like, I'm a better pilot than you, and it's all good, like, which is all great and I enjoyed, but it's like shit is dark in the real world, and especially with the treatment of women. And I'm glad that they addressed it in this movie, and you know, whether or not they did it right remains to be seen, but if that is even possible, but I'm glad that they're not ignoring it.
It is something I've liked about I know we haven't really gone into the plot yet, but one thing before we got into the plot is that I've also heard people be like, oh, this didn't come out at the right time. And I feel like based on what we were doing with those Disney Plus shows, like leading up to this movie, it felt like the right timing for me, because I saw this as, like the same way that WandaVision tackled something like grief, and not just in, oh, she's just sad. It was like, look at what she's doing to other people around her while she processes her grief, or look at what it's like for a Black person like Sam Wilson to like inhabit this white space and try to be a superhero. and this is about the agency of women's bodies and what kind of control do they actually have over it. I know that it's kind of painted as there's this villain that's twisting knobs and everything, but it's still a very real thing that they're dealing with. And it isn't about, hey, like how cool did the villain look at the end of the movie, but they've actually engaged with a topic that's got some meat on the bone. It's not just about closing a portal in the sky. So I felt like this came out at the right time of like what they were doing, in addition to like stupid stuff like, oh, like you get to see the original Black Widow costume and like comic accurate stuff like that. I know people are mad about another thing we'll get to, but I genuinely was like, this is doing everything these Disney Plus shows have been doing as well, like tackling real issues and then giving you the comic book fans like stuff ripped from the page, like in terms of visually that they like. So I thought it came out at the right time, because I feel like the pressure on and I can still hear people talking about it, but the pressure on a Black Widow movie would have been like, well, where's Captain America there? Where's Hawkeye and all this stuff? I'm like, we're not in that mode right now. Like it's like whoever the title character is, we're talking about them for this movie.
Yeah, it's also fundamentally missing the point too. Is like, this is a standalone movie. Like if you're watching a movie just to have someone else show up in that movie, you're not engaging in that movie's content, and you're not even giving it a fair shot. So therefore, your judgment of it is biased, or their judgment of it is heavily biased. I'm glad we didn't get Robert Downey Jr. in this. Like,
yes, I said the same
thing. I'm so glad, because that would have been just like a derailment. And I'm like, for a women's movie that's dealing with real world kind of things, it definitely came out at the right time, because, when it came out, there's still laws being passed in parts of like America that are destabilizing women's right to access healthcare for their own bodies, right? It's exactly talking about the things that we need to talk about as a society right now. There's a lot of content creators that have reviewed this, like, what's the point of this movie? I'm like, dude, you put on a different hat. Like, put on a different hat.
Yeah. I'm much like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, very disappointed in the conversations around this movie, and what people were hoping for.
Correct.
Versus what they actually got. But do you want to get into the actual movie and like what happens?
Well, I mean, yes, but also like, do you want to talk at all about like a journey to make the movie? Like, sure. I mean, you probably know more than me, but like, it sounds like it's been in the works for so long. And like, just speaking about, is this the right time? I don't know if it could have come out any sooner, because they tried and like I mean, like I said, you probably know about that a bit more, but
I know Ike Perlmutter was like, there will be no female-led movies. He was even as early as Thor: The Dark World, like, oh, we're not going to have female villains either. Like, that's just not a thing, because he did not think that boys would buy the action figures. And he clearly does not know me when I was however old, because I was like, yeah, if it's an action figure, I'm getting it. I need female action figures to tell my stories as well. So like, they will buy them. But that was the issue blocking any kind of, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Black Widow solo movies, was Ike Perlmutter's fear that no one was going to buy the merchandise after the fact, even if they went to go see the movie. So yeah, I think by the time Ike is actually out of the picture, they probably already had a game plan, and this was the soonest it was going to come. And I'm sure they would have done a good job, but I'm more of a like Marvel post 2014 fan, so I would have rather that happen later anyway, instead of the kind of the cynical stuff they were doing beforehand.
I agree. I think if this movie came out before phase 3, anytime before phase 3, it would have been like, oh, it's a lip service movie. This is a throwaway movie. We would have been judging it and in a negative light, and it wouldn't have had this level of gravity. I'm glad you said post 2014 MCU, because there's a decided point where there was more of a social awareness in the movies. and they started responding to the criticisms that they're like, hey, there's no LGBTQ representation. We've yet to see that in a significant capacity. There's no racial diversity. Okay, we're getting Shang-Chi, but we're getting an Asian martial artist. So I'm like, yeah, okay, great job there. They're doing the things that they're doing, and they're realizing, like, I Perlmutter, you're wrong, because these movies, look at the revenue they're generating. You're so wrong and so stupid for trying to layer your misogyny under profit. Like, that's just bullshit. You're misogynistic. So yeah, I don't think it would have been genuinely made to the same degree that it would have been made if it came out before Phase 3, I feel.
Yeah. Anyway, either I don't remember when Ike left, but anytime after he left is what I would rather this movie come out. But yeah, it is. Yeah, I think they did a good job with the story they told. I didn't feel like it was just to fill time. But yeah, I think, I guess we can just talk about characters then. Like, as I already alluded to, like, I really liked Yelena. Like, I can tell they're setting her up, obviously, because of the post-credit scene, but I was really on board with her being the little sister and the youngest kid, and being like, yeah, that's the best part of my life, and you're telling me it's a lie. Like, her getting the validation that one by one, like, the dad actually cared, the mom actually cared, and then finally Natasha actually cared. That was more of a satisfying thing for me than the, like, fight at the end of the movie. I was just like, yeah, like, I'm glad that she has that in her head now. She doesn't have to, like, worry about was it real or was it not anymore.
Yeah, I loved Yelena, and I mean, Florence Pugh, just chef's kiss. I think she did a great job.
Yeah.
And, like, I mean, because that's kind of, I mean, after the opening credits or, like, title sequence, that's one of the first things we see, right, is, like, the kind of the introduction of her as an adult, and like, on assignment to find the other widow. And you kind of learn that they're being mind controlled, and I think that, you know, it's like setting up what the, you know, problem is that they have to solve in this movie. And yeah, I mean, I would definitely, I have a lot of thoughts on her that I will get to, because I am her.
Nice.
Because I want to preface by saying, like, my sister and I are, she's my older sister, and we are 4 years apart, and it's just us two. And so, you know, it really felt like, and we watched it together for the first time, and hey, Shirley, and we, like, it really, like, it was so relatable. It felt like I have so much to say about that, in terms of coming from being the younger sister of two, and having an older sister who, that relationship, I think, was just so well done.
Yeah, I really liked it.
And yeah, I mean, when we get to those parts, like, I'll say my piece, but I mean, can we talk about Taskmaster?
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, let's do that.
She was kind of introduced around this time in the movie, and people seem upset.
Yes.
So yeah, I think I learned the day after I watched it that people actually care about Taskmaster. I never heard anyone talk about that character up until this movie came out. And then apparently this was the biggest travesty ever. Like, this, how dare they, like, do this to us, Marvel? And I'm like, relax. Like, apparently he's like this annoying, like, quip spewing villain. And I'm like, did you really think that's what you were going to get after those opening credits? Like, a quip spewing villain that's called Taskmaster? Like, Anthony Masters is going to, like, be joking around like an evil Spider-Man? Like, obviously not. And also, all of these mantles get passed around. Like, we've just watched a movie where the second Black Widow emerged. we've seen a second Captain America emerge from from another Disney Plus thing. Like, relax. If you're mad it wasn't a guy beating up a woman this time, I'm sure they'll get around to it. Like, this made more sense for the movie, in my opinion.
It made more sense for the movie. I think some of the online reaction is that they reduced a fully fleshed out character into an android robot control thing. And I can understand that, but for the story that they were telling here, it was so much more effective in this situation, right? And who's to
People
say that
say fully
can't
fledged,
be
but
replicated in someone else?
I know of Taskmaster. I don't like, my memory of him is like, yeah, he like can mimic people and he goes after, in my opinion, weaker character, like, or not like Thor. He doesn't go after someone like Thor. So that you're just really like, the impressive thing is that he can mimic whoever he's fighting, and you're like, yeah, we still got that in this movie.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
this Taskmaster is actually tied to a piece of Natasha that has kind of eaten her up inside. So you even get an emotional payoff when she's able to like speak to her, but while the Red Room is crashing down. Like, it seemed, yeah, like I don't know about fully formed character, but I'm sure there are instances of people feeling that way. I've just never heard anyone speak about Taskmaster even the way they spoke about Mandarin before they got pissed off in Iron Man 3. Like, at least for that one, I was like, yeah, I get it. That's like Iron Man's Joker. I can see some people being like feeling cheated, but like, Taskmaster is nothing to nobody. I like, in terms of these characters that we've been invested in all of these years. I'm talking about MCU. I'm not talking about comics. Like, Taskmaster is nothing. So at no point am I thinking he's going to come in and be this like dynamic, interesting character, unless it is someone connected directly to Natasha and she feels something about Taskmaster.
Because the only other thing that would have been like, oh, Taskmaster is this person who also raised her or something like that. It would be like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. But like, I don't care that it wasn't Anthony Masters. I don't. Because I mean, like, A, there was nothing really tying me to that character. You're right. He's a merc that basically just, and in the comic book run, sets up an academy where he teaches supervillains how to fight superheroes. So I mean, that's hilarious in its own nature.
Sounds like a joke.
Like, that's laughable. It is a joke to me. It's like, that's a joke, right? Like, we're trying to establish real world things. If you're going to open up a superhero fighting academy, guess who's going to knock on your door? It's like, hey, this is S.H.I.E.L.D. Maybe you don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, what were your opinions on Taskmaster? I feel like I really ran with that. Sorry, Michelle.
I actually wanted to know your guys, because I have no prior knowledge of this character myself. So, like, honest to tell you the truth, I thought it was a robot for like most of the movie.
Yeah.
Yep. And it could have been. I mean, it basically, it seemed to serve the purpose of like, we got to, see, oh, that was like a Black Panther move, or that was, like, that was kind of fun, but also, like, we'll get to it at the end, but it kind of served the purpose of like Dreykov's showing who he is as a person. And I mean, getting, like, you guys already kind of mentioned the Budapest origin scene. And yeah, I mean, like, I think Hawkeye wasn't in that. I assumed to not pull focus because this is Nat's movie and she deserves her moment in the spotlight. I mean, we got to hear his voice in it, which was
that him? That was for sure. I'm not challenging you. I thought it might be him, but I've never heard anyone say that it was him.
I didn't recognize his voice, but I just figured it must be him.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, so within this scene, like, kind of seeing the origins of Nat and the origins of, the quote red in her ledger being this young girl who she believes that she's killed. I mean, the red in the ledger thing, like, does that just mean kills?
I think this movie does a lot of things that confuse the issue, but I think the general idea is she is a killer, so she has red on her ledger. Plus, she used a kid to get one of her kills, so she already feels bad about the way using that kid. But I think realistically, even if she hadn't killed Dreykov's daughter, she wouldn't feel like, oh, I don't have any red in my ledger. I think she always would feel that way because of everything she did as a Black Widow. It's just what's really eating at her is the way she callously used that kid. Like, I feel like people use the fact that she doesn't seem that remorseful about it in this movie as a flaw of the movie, but I'm like, no, I think that's giving more details to this character, that she's like, yeah, I am a shitty person because I am the type of person that would have let it gladly use that kid to get to the target I was actually trying to acquire. I think she probably has to work on that, but it's not something that she's like, this is what makes me bad. I think she's just like, yeah, I'm also like, I would also do that. I used to do stuff like that. I'm a shitty person.
Yep.
Well, it's also like, is that what the Americans made her do to prove herself to them or something? Like, that's kind of a dark,
Yes.
thought on its
Yeah.
own.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to point out too. I wanted to point that out too because it's through no fault of her own. It's Shield during the time that it was controlled by Hydra, first and foremost. So let's put that into perspective. And that was the last mission for her fully defecting to Shield. So she was running with Shield. It was Shield people that put up the plan.
Right.
So
I do think she takes ownership
of.
I think she takes ownership of using the kid. Having rewatched it, I think she takes ownership of that.
I think she's the only one that feels guilty.
Yeah, I don't think they were like, hey, you can use the kid, or even if they did, she took that as the option she was going to do. So I don't think she's like, oh, it just happened that way. I think she does take ownership of the fact that, like, yeah, I used the kid to get close to him. Like that was the move. But I think one thing that helps me with this movie is, I think it's said a couple of times by Rachel Weisz's character, I never remember her character, Milena, was just the concept of pain makes you stronger. And so when you take a look at Yelena and Natasha, obviously there's like that element of, and it's not just physical pain, even though physical pain plays into how she defeats the bad guy in this movie. That pain of losing that family, that bit of happiness, has driven both of those two characters and made it so that they didn't get wiped out by the Red Room. I think the pain of feeling betrayed by Dreykov pushed Red Guardian to where he was. I think Melina has that pain as well that pushes her to keep going. It even pushes Taskmaster. Like, obviously that's a very painful thing, and I don't just mean because her face got burnt. It is the first thing she says when she's free is he gone? Like, that pain of knowing that your father would use you like that. That she wasn't protected necessarily. She was just like, oh great, now I can use you the way I'm using everyone else here. That pain kind of drove her, and it is the one person who's not strong. And I know they really shine a light on it when Natasha says, you weren't even strong enough to sever the nerve in my nose. But it's the one guy who even says, yeah, I got to fight from the shadows, and like, he didn't have pain in his life, so he doesn't make it through that movie. I think this is like any kind of mistake I think the movie makes kind of gets washed away by that consistent through line of this study of pain making these characters stronger, or if that's even an important thing. Like, I think the movie is kind of leaning towards, yes, it is important, but as I said, the movie is also like, also removing that pain is important by like that family coming back together by the end of it. That's the actual win, is that they're able to admit to each other that time together meant something to them.
Absolutely. And like just that
I see,
not only,
so I saw the Dreykov.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, sorry. Just that not only that, like, losing family is such a strong cause of pain for people, but also that, like, your family themselves can be the cause of your pain.
Yes.
And I think that was a really important, like, the trauma of family is kind of universal. Like, even if you have the best family in the world,
Definitely.
you have some sort of triggers and traumas that your family brings out in you.
100%. Because once they get Alexei, like Red Guardian, back, it leads to a funny moment for me, but they're still like, what do? They go right to, don't make a stupid joke about, is it my time of the month? Like, remember what you gave us
Yeah.
up to. Like, and so like even them reuniting still forces them to reckon with a bunch of painful things. So yeah, I think you're right that it's like the loss of the family, but also just being in that family can cause the pain as well. But what were we going to say, Ben?
So, yeah, I had one final thought about the Dreykov daughter killing thing. To me, one of the biggest things with Black Widow's character was that she could always, to me, I felt like there was a pivotal reason why the Dreykov daughter thing was such a big deal. And that to me was that she became Dreykov in the sense where she's like, oh, this young girl, her life is as inconsequential as mine. And that's what my father or this Dreykov guy does to women. I'm doing the same thing. I'm replicating the same thing to justify my defecting to S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm still using someone else and causing them pain and suffering for my benefit. So I thought like that's what added on to it a little bit more too, is the fact that she's echoing a lot of what Dreykov has been doing with young girls. And like, hey, you're inconsequential. And even in the later part of the movie, he describes it as the world's greatest natural resource, girls. And I'm like, that is so disgusting. Mm-hmm. For him. And I thought like that's where the red is the idea of like, I've sunk into that level to have a kid, to rely on a young woman and her life trajectory or all that kind of stuff to get what I need. And that's what I thought was added to her red, and why Loki was so effective at trying to bring that up in Avengers 1. That big payoff scene.
To be clear, he wasn't effective. She was playing him, yes, which I like. Correct. That she brought up again in this movie. That and it's what made me start to like Black Widow as a character, that she doesn't just punch people's heads in. She can actually manipulate people into getting the information she wants. So yeah, Loki brings it up, but that is all a part of her interrogation plan. Just the same way it happens
Absolutely.
to Dreykov, as he thinks he's getting to her, and all he's doing is giving her the information she wants. Oh, Ben.
Yeah. Very much like the first throwback to the first Avengers thing. Yeah.
But yeah, we keep threatening to get into this movie. I don't know. I guess realistically, the movie, as we are like 45 minutes in here, the movie is Black Widow has to meet up with her family again to take care of unfinished business, aka the Red Room, where, because she thought she got rid of it back when she defected, but obviously she didn't. So there's a bunch of widows around, and there is a gas that can remove the mind control. So I think that was also an important thing, is that Yelena says right away, this is mind control, and Natasha goes, haha, very funny, be like, or grow up, or something like that. But they had two distinct experiences with the Red Room. She was just indoctrinated into the way of the Red Room, whereas Yelena legitimately had no say in it and was mind controlled into being part of the Red Room. And I think that's why I liked this movie, because it was like, oh, this is a new threat. This isn't just going back and like doing so. It's like, no, like this is something that needs to be taken care of right now. Like, we actually do have to go back and stop this, because this organization is literally mind controlling people, and not just being like, hey, this is the way of our life. It's like, no, you don't have any say in the matter, even down to they'll kill you when they want to. Like I really like that scene when they meet up again in Budapest, and the one Black Widow is like, I don't even want to do this, he's making me do this, and she like fries her own brain. And I was just like, yeah, this is a big deal. This is something that needs to be tackled right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And like leading to the like meeting up of Yelena and Natasha was like, I liked a lot of the jokes in those scenes. Like, that was a really important part of the movie for me, was like them reconnecting as sisters and realizing that, Natasha basically abandoned Yelena,
Mhm.
thinking like not really looking into it, going off, and Yelena references like not wanting your little sister to tag along, and it's like this is where I really related to this movie and having a big sister, and that's the person that can like it, you had a lot of the same experiences. Well, you lived in the same place, you have the same parents and people in your life, but you can have a completely different experience
Mhm.
of that time than one other person, and that can really trigger you, and like the ribbing of each other was so like, well, mostly the Elena ribbing Natasha was just like so enjoyable, and like there was so like making fun of the fact that they did kind of make fun of the fact that she fell from like a huge building and hit a million ledges on her way down and basically had to take ibuprofen and was fine. But and the posing joke and stuff, it was kind of, to me it was kind of like tongue in cheek about like the origins of Black Widow in the MCU and how she's so just
As if
sexy
someone's
and
always watching her. Yeah. I
yeah, and
really
it's
like that.
like I really like that too. And I like the because that's what's always been cool about Black Widow, is that she's not super powered and she's able to hold her own with the Avengers. But I'm glad that they addressed it, and
Right.
it wasn't just like
She needs to be on the mend. I also really
Yeah.
liked, again, about Yelena needing that confirmation. Like, she kind of throws the vest out there, and when Natasha goes like, "Yeah, that's a cool vest," she's like, "I knew it. I knew you would like it." Like,
Yeah.
it is a funny moment, but it's such an endearing moment that like she actually cared. Because as she said, that is the first piece of clothing she bought when she had her mind back to herself. So that would really be like, do you approve of my taste? Like, do you like this? And I really liked that character moment, that like, yes, I got a laugh out of it, but it was really this important thing to Yelena, that her big sister would like what she considers a cool thing.
And that it has pockets. We all
does
know
have
women
pockets.
need more pockets.
They definitely do.
Yeah, and it has pockets.
And
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of
And-
clothes, like I
And
do
to your point,
appreciate
Michelle,
that.
I think
Go ahead.
no, I think just to your point, I think there's a lot of self-awareness in that scene alone, how they're ribbing on each other, making fun of the character of Black Widow, of being like, but there's so many meta jokes in there that do kind of describe to me how she was used poorly in phase 1 and 2 and all that kind of stuff, like an object, and then doing all these things and being in service. That those are a lot of really good meta jokes in there, written, sprinkled out, that just attack that criticism right away. And I really, really loved it. The pocket thing being like that, yeah, women's clothing not having pockets, it's such a stupid thing to me, and which is why it's like, yeah, when there are pockets, it's actually really, really like useful. And like the way she goes into it, it's like, yeah, look how useful. There's so many pockets. I could put so many things in here. It's so useful.
I love that.
It's amazing. It's so good.
Especially, I mean, given Black Widow's early costume. I mean, their costumes are still pretty skin tight, but like they were skin tight, where it was like there would have been no protection, no like, it was just silly. And I'm glad that they addressed that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like video game logic where you're like, oh, the final overpowered outfit is a metal bikini, and that provides you with how much damage resistance over a full suit of armor. What? Like, come on, let's not be so objectifying of women so blatantly in that regard, right?
Yeah.
But
give them pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely liked that. I feel, yeah, some characters that didn't work for me would be I don't know how to say this guy's last name, but OTF.
I don't know how to say the last name.
He's from Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
Everyone thought he was going to be Taskmaster because there was a grid saying they needed a black villain, and he's literally the only black man in the movies. And I guess everyone just assumed the villain would be black. I don't even know if they say his name in the movie. And I was just like, what is the point? Like, I get it. You need to explain how she has access to things, but I'm like, it does feel like we're missing a part of his storyline. Like, it's just like, what? It seems like I'm supposed to like feel like, oh, that's who that is. Whereas I'm just like, who is this guy? Like at one point I'm thinking he's like, we're in a relationship, and then she's like, oh, you're just my friend, and then he makes a comment about that. But also she makes it clear she's just paying him to be around, and I'm just like, I don't get this at all. I don't know why it works. And I don't know if Rachel Weisz's character fully worked for me. I was just kind of like, yeah, you do just kind of go good out of nowhere. It seemed like you were a villain up until that point.
Yeah, I have a lot of
I don't
mixed feelings
trust
about
her.
her
I don't
as
trust
well.
her at all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But Alexi, I
I think
mean,
she's like secretly trying to take over the Red Room or cover her rust or something like that. Yeah,
That'd
I
be
don't
cool.
trust her.
Yeah.
Just don't trust her.
I agree.
Mhm.
But I mean, and I have more thoughts about that a bit later on, but like I would like to talk about Alexi more because we get to the part where they are breaking him out of prison, which I thought was just so much fun. And I like, so he couldn't have actually fought Steve Rogers, right?
I kept
As his
thinking they
friend.
were like, oh, he fought Black Captain America. I don't Isaiah Washington. I'm like, no, he was gone too by that point. He was definitely only active in the 60s. And then I was like, yeah, who does, because he's obviously seen imagery. So he knows that it's
Isaiah
someone who looks like
Bradley.
Steve Rogers. He wouldn't
Yeah,
be confused about that. So I guess it's,
because that was only a Vietnam, Korean War kind of thing, right?
yeah. But I don't think he's lying. I think he did interact with Captain America. It's just, I don't know how, other than if it was like the Steve Rogers that was returning the time stones or something like that, even though he wouldn't
Oh,
have any need to do that. But maybe he was like, well, I'll intervene sometimes or something like that, because he's supposed to be just hanging out with Peggy. But I'm like, maybe
yeah.
that's what he's on. But also, I don't think this was written when they wanted to like acknowledge, oh, Ben will be back, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know if it was written when they wanted to acknowledge that end game ending, but it could be.
Well, and I mean, that could be it, but it also occurred to me that he's just like this delusional, crazy Russian guy who's been in jail, and he bases his whole bravado off of like being Russia's answer to Captain America, so that he just like kind of drank the Kool-Aid of the Cold War, like Russia versus
But
America
he,
thing, and he just kind of like created this delusion for himself.
but he did ask Natasha straight up, does he ever talk about me? And it
Yeah.
seems like if you know that you never faced him, why would you ask that to the one person that can verify? No, of course he didn't talk about you because he doesn't know who you are.
Yeah.
So I feel like he must have interacted with a Captain America because, yeah, talking to the prison people, sure, you can make up whatever you want, even when they say obviously you didn't meet him because he was in the ice and then he just beats them in an arm wrestle and everyone, I guess, might is right. But to ask Natasha, someone he knows would know the answer, to be like, but seriously, does he talk about me? I feel like he really is, because they're all trying to get validation in their own way, right? And obviously, Alexi's validation is, you think of me as the hero, right? So, like, does your guy ever talk about me? Because, we're the same here. So I just assume that this isn't something he's making up. It's something that he
Yeah.
needs to hold on to like feel like he mattered because he was tossed away by Dracoff and put into jail.
That part was fun, and like the when he grabs both of the daughter's hands and it is like
Mhm.
flopping them around and just like having this
I've been
completely
racking my
different experience.
brain.
Go ahead.
You might have to restart your computer, Ben.
Oh darn.
But
Whether
yeah,
or not, like, it did. Yeah, damn it.
yeah, you might have to restart your computer, man. But yeah, I think I liked that was kind of his thing. Is like, you are my girls, even though he was really about himself. He obviously sees Natasha and Yelena as an extension of himself, so he's still proud of them, and that means something to him. Whether or
Yeah,
not that's
absolutely.
healthy is debatable, but I
Yeah.
do think that he genuinely cares for them.
And I just loved him. I really liked him. And like I thought, it was a great like the whole PMSing comment. It was like that was just great to me because it like I'm sure every woman has been accused of being
Mhm.
on their period when they're angry for a legitimate reason that is also an obvious reason.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just like that they responded using all of like the anatomical terms, because it's like,
You
first
don't
of
have
all,
to be so clinical.
yeah, like, which is like, oh, shut up. Like, and like, it also kind of gives them the chance to readdress that after the whole like Bruce Banner and Natasha discussion in Age of Ultron,
That
where
was a
she
real
basically
fumble.
calls herself a monster because she can't have children, which just never really sat well with me, because they kind of left it at that. And it's like, first of all, women who can't have children are not monsters and are still women. And it's like, what they did, like, I like, they're saying it in a joking way, but they're addressing that it's such a
Mhm.
terrible thing to do to women. And like, the whole history of women's reproductive health is so fucked up in real life that, I'm glad that they're just like
I
saying it.
I didn't like that part. So I think in our Age of Ultron was one of our first episodes. And I remember that really bumping me for me, but I've heard people talk about it since, saying that those were two thoughts put together, that she didn't actually say she's a monster because she can't have kids. I still remember it as that's what she was saying.
Yeah.
But but I guess they're saying no, it was she's a killer and a monster. And if he's looking for a family, they can't have that because she can't have kids. But
Which, okay, yeah, even if that's true, it's like, which it probably is, it's still, I didn't feel like they gave that enough
oh yeah, it was very
room,
poorly done. It was a big fumble for sure. Like
Yeah.
I was definitely like, oh boy.
So I'm glad
And
that
then
they
we
did
learned
it in
about
a
Joss
way.
Whedon, and it was like, oh, that makes sense that he
Oh
would
God.
add that to
Yep.
the MCU.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No good. Um, but yeah, Ben, just to catch you up, we were at the scene where they get very specific about what happened to them in the Red Room in terms of having an unwanted hysterectomy.
Yep. Yep.
I really liked it. I liked that scene a lot, but I obviously did not know how that would play for everybody, including uh, women. I didn't know if they would be like, "Oh, that's okay."
Mm.
Yeah,
Obviously,
I
everyone will be
personally,
different.
I
Yeah.
liked, I think any chance to just like say those words in
Mhm.
a huge, these movies are seen by like more people in the world than any other movies, and it's like, personally, I think that it should just be talked about in no uncertain terms, and just,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be the end of their lives that they can't have children. It's just something that happened to them and it's part of their story, and it's horrible. And it's just another example of this whole system of, controlling the women in this movie.
Definitely.
I also like what it ultimately says about the idea of like, hey, you don't have to give birth to have a family, because this movie is like none of them are related, and they reform their family, and then by the end of the movie, she's going off again for another. So it's the idea of like breaking down that idea of family. You have to birth your own kid in order for it to be considered family, because this movie goes at great lengths to proving that, and I really appreciated that discussion in that. And yeah,
Yeah, I'm glad they addressed it again.
Mhm.
Yeah, they really needed to get back to that thought, I think,
Yes,
and reframe it, because yeah, I did not like that aspect of Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
Yep. Nobody did.
It's
To be
very
Yeah, that was a
obvious.
weird, that was a
Everyone was
weird
like,
moment.
that is horrifying that these are the words used to
Mhm.
describe women that are not able to have children of their own. Like, that's just horror, like terrible.
And it's just, and it's another example of Nat being kind, like, her personality and her heart was kind of teased out through all the other movies, and this movie is like, we finally get to see her separate from the Avengers and separate from the Hulk, and like just addressing herself as a person. And
Mhm.
and I just think that they did a good job of that in this.
And I like that she straight up says to Melina, yeah, what you taught me is what got me through life, which one of those things was don't give them your heart. So we
Mhm.
kind of get why she's so guarded when we see her earlier in earlier MCU fare, because she obviously needs to keep that part for just herself. And so yeah, giving her a movie where it can just be about her, well, about the people she cares about, we can see
Mhm.
more of her. Like, yeah, the way she gets angry at ostensibly her mom and dad, like basically being, she just like, I think she calls, does she call, oh yeah, she calls her dad an idiot and then calls her mom a coward. And it's like, yeah, like I've never seen Natasha get like that for anything. Like
True.
this means something. This is a raw nerve. Like she wasn't being cool about it. She wasn't being
Yeah.
matter of fact about it. She's like, she wants to be heard in that moment. Like she repeats it to them and is giving them straight up eye contact, and it matters to her. So I liked that. Yeah, we were getting a chance to see her with her guard down.
And that's why I feel like the whole kind of reuniting the family dinner sequence was like the heart of the movie, and like
Yeah, I loved it.
around must have been around the midpoint of the movie. And like it, I mean, I like that it starts with Alexei, psyching himself up to
Mhm.
get into his costume, but it does, like, even though he's, being like self-obsessed, he's a warmer person than Melina. And
Yes.
I think it's interesting to show, because in the MCU so far, the only, like, the mother figures that I can think of are all that kind of all sacrificing mother, tiger mom, who, like, would does die for their children. And I think, like, it's often in real life, it's is more complicated than that, and there are mothers who aren't, you know quote, natural mothers, and there
Mhm.
are, and I love that we learn through this whole scene who, or like, what the undercover family meant to each of them.
Mhm.
And that the only one openly admitting how real it was to them is Yelena. Which
Yeah,
I
I love
just,
that.
Mhm.
yeah, I relate to that so much. And like, because I mean, this is like a silly example. I obviously did not grow up with this rough of an upbringing, but
Mhm.
like, it makes me think of, like, say for example, Christmas dinner, like finding out that, like, nobody else in my family really cared to continue Christmas dinner. And then to
Mhm.
me, that was like a stab in the gut, because it was like, as the youngest, like, those are my memories of my
Yeah.
childhood. And those are like, having such a different relationship to your childhood is part of being a family. And we're all, I think, around that age where you're distant enough from your childhood that you see how it shaped you, and you, like, to hear that it was so different for somebody else. No, I mean, and it wasn't like, I think they all kind of in the end came to realize that they were a real family in some way.
Mhm.
But in that moment, it's so raw for Yelena, and it's so, like, that just really touched me. And
Yeah. It was very
especially,
touching.
sorry,
Yeah. No, continue.
well, and like, I was just going to go into the Alexei Yelena scene, and like, he's talking about his stupid story of his dad peeing on his hands, which is so
Mhm.
funny. And then, like, this was the most emotional I was through this whole movie, was when he starts singing American Pie, because
Mhm.
there's such a special relationship between a father and a daughter that it really got me. And like, I was crying, and it makes you want to know more about their life in America together,
Mhm.
and how many times they listened to that song. Like, was it the only thing that would stop Yelena from crying in the cars? Like, you can feel this whole other life that they had,
Mhm.
that was just beautiful.
And what I loved about it was he was obviously accessing that information. Like he puts his fist to his temple and then gets the lyrics out. Like it's not just like he's like, all right, shut up. Here's the song you like. It was like, what can I do in this moment to show her that like I'm just bad with this? And so like he uses a
Mhm.
song instead of saying I care about you. It's like I can sing this song. I have this. Because even at the end of the movie, she's like, do you have anything to say? And he's like, I'm just gonna mess it up. Like he's not good with speaking about his
Mhm.
emotions. So it was nice that it was like to see Alexi actually have to be like, all right, what can I do? Like I talking
Mhm.
isn't helping right now. So
Mhm.
I like that he put effort into it. It wasn't just like a knee-jerk reaction.
Mhm. I really what you said, Michelle, about the maternal thing, about how not all women are natural mothers, because I feel like there's so much gaslighting in that regard of like, oh, it'll come naturally to you, and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, how is that possibly true when there's so many books on parenting that people are required to read now? Like, don't tell me maternal instincts is a thing when there's so much reading, so much insecurity, and all that kind of stuff. There's like this unwritten rule of like gaslighting new moms of like, oh, it'll come naturally and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, I know many people that have actively complained like, no, it does not, and that's not a thing, and it's stupid. So to your point, we're pointing out Rachel Weisz's character being like cold and not maternal at all is such a beautiful thing, because yeah, it's even what she says at the dinner table is like, the world functions on a higher order when like everything's controlled or something like that. There's so much coldness in that statement alone that I could not imagine Alexi saying that, but I could fully on see her saying that based on she's like, hey, I've been on the wet row, like I've been through the red room 4 times, or like this happened and all this kind of stuff. I created the red room and all this. It's yeah, she had more of her heart stripped away from her than Alexi ever did. Alexi's
I do want to
giant
shoot
goofball, though.
I do want to shoot her some bail. I feel like she definitely was maternal. I mean, the first time you see her, she's kissing her boo boo and giving them advice on how to like move on from this pain right now. And it is basically the whole point of the movie, of this pain making you stronger. But she didn't just say it to her and walk away. She made sure she came down to her level, kissed her to make her feel better, and then and everything she does with Natasha, if you notice throughout the movie, is her constantly checking in to say, how are you feeling? And actually being like, are you taking care of yourself? She is checking in with her daughters. She was just putting her guards up because her daughters came in being like, fuck you, you abandoned us. While I still think I think that's why the character doesn't work for me, because yes, you can read it as, oh, she's just up to no good and a spy, but there's stuff in the movie that writing ways wouldn't make sense for both things to be true. And yet we're seeing both things, that she is cold, but I do still think that there is enough times that she checks in with Natasha. And even her whole plan is to save these 3 people that she loves, even if she's got other ulterior motives. It is still a maternal instinct to protect and insulate the people she cares about.
I never saw it like that. That's a very, very good point. I didn't read into her actions. I just looked at that one scene and what she said. So thank you for bringing that up. That was really good.
But that's not to say like, so she's a good guy. I'm just saying it's a weird character because I don't feel like we get enough time with her as we do with Alexi. And so there's 2 characters that seem like they could be richer characters. I'd actually, no, the guy that keeps getting them jets, I could have done without him. But at least with Milena, like, it's like, yeah, that is an interesting character we could have dug into, but it feels like all of her stuff is happening off screen, except for that she generally cares about. Like the commercials try to make it seem like she doesn't like Red Guarding because like, oh, you got fat, but she says, but you still look at like, you're still handsome. Like it was just like, oh yeah, you got big, but like even in that moment, continuing that kind of romantic relationship with him, like she's still attracted to him. And then for her kids, she's interacting on their terms with them.
That's fair. Very good points.
Well, and talking about her contribution to the Red Room's mind control program, it's like she is this kind of like she carries both sides in her almost. Like it's like, did you really not know that they were using this on young women and your daughter? And did you really did that awaken her like long dormant motherly feelings? Like, did she call the Red Room to like, did she call them because that's exactly what Nat and Yelena were there to find? Or did she call them to turn them in? Or was it all mixed together?
Yeah, I think the uncertainty of that is why her character doesn't fully work for me. I definitely think it's an interesting character. I just wish we got more of it, but it does feel like, as both of you have alluded to, that we could see her again as the new head of the Red Room or something like that. Like I don't think MCU is done with her. I just think like more so than Taskmaster, I felt cheated out of a character by her because, as you said, yeah, like there's still the element of she called the Red Room. It's like, what was that about? But I also see that she cares about these people, but she's also willing to let this pig go to his death within 11 seconds as she's trying to explain something. And so I think what that's trying to illustrate is that she's so excited about what she can do, she's not actually thinking about the effects, aka you realize they did that on your daughter. You're so proud of the fact that you came up with it that you were like not thinking about like, oh yeah, that could be used on my two daughters that are currently in the program.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was just Yelena at that time, I don't know. Or yeah, I'm choking this pig out to prove a point of view that I can make this pig choke himself to death. And it's just like, I get that that's kind of like the Sherlock thing of like he only cares about what he cares about, but that only works with Sherlock because the whole thing is about Sherlock. This time it's like, well, this is one character in a whole cast of other characters, and she's not the lead, so we're never going to really be able to fully reconcile what her deal is.
Well, and getting to the Red Room sequence and like the kind of climax of the movie, I mean, there's so much in there about, you know, and speaking of mothers, Melina and Draco kind of both reveal something about Natasha's biological mother, which kind of gives context to I think in Endgame on whatever planet where Red Skull and the Soul Stone are, he tells her their names, right?
He says her dad's name.
Yeah, he says daughter of Ivan.
Yeah, and he says Clint's mother's name.
Yeah, he says Natasha, daughter of Ivan, and Clint's family's name and all that kind of stuff. But you know, which is an interesting revelation for why Red Skull would say that. You know, because clearly here it's her wanting her mom to be like, hey, I wasn't thrown away, and she gets confirmation of that. So I mean, great stuff for there, for sure. But yeah, the mother thing for sure was it was a interesting note, especially when you're right to bring up Endgame when Red Skull's like, hey, daughter of Ivan. I'm like, it's weird. It's a really weird thing. But
yeah, I don't know. And speaking of Dracov, I wanted to point out, I don't know if you noticed that there was a portrait of Rasputin in his office.
Yeah. Yes, I did see that.
Which I thought was really interesting because, like, especially because of the whole Melina reveals that he has this pheromone control weird thing that stops any widows from harming him. And it kind of like, I mean, first of all, I'm pretty sure Rasputin was stinky, so that's kind of fun. But also that he was like in the ear of the you know, Serena or Queen or whatever of Russia, that, you know, that gave him all this influence over the country. So it's like, of course that's his idol.
I think he also was rumored to have a way with women, so I think it's even more tightly connected to Dreykov, or Dreykov feeling connected to him, that he feels he's conquered women in that sense. And part of that mythos is that he was good in bed and women liked him, in addition to having control over the royal family.
Interesting. I didn't think of it that way. I was just like, oh, Rasputin, that's a Russian thing.
Yeah,
I didn't read too much into it. That's really, really good notice points, Michelle.
Thanks. And yeah, I mean, this whole scene, like, I would love to know your guys' thoughts on that whole part where he kind of, I mean, first of all, it was fun that she got to do her whole thank you for your cooperation
I loved
absolutely
it.
bit, which is always
I was waiting for it. I was like, no, is he getting the best of her? And then when she said, I was like, thank goodness. I was worried there for a second. I really like this scene. I know people are like, pheromones, this is stupid, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, what how else would you would need something in place to make sure these people don't turn on you.
The thing I thought was stupid was, why are you punching her in the nose? That's what I thought was stupid. If you're admitting that it's based on pheromones and it's based on scent, why are you punching her in the nose?
Well, the point is he's not that smart, right? Like nothing that's happening is his doing. He can control the stuff. But this is what I was saying earlier, right? He is the antithesis of what they're talking. Not even antithesis. He's the mistake that proves the point, that he's never had any pain in his life, so he's not strong. That means mentally, that means physically, in the sense of not being able to break her nose. And the idea is she was working him, and so she got what she wanted out of it. The added insult to injury is that he wasn't even strong enough to do what she was trying to get him to do.
Yeah. No, but it was like, to me in that moment, I'm like, as a villain, you're just like, you're real stupid for doing this. You're real stupid for punching her directly in the nose.
But again, he's never had to do anything, right?
I get
she
that.
said you didn't even fight, like you just hide in the dark. So he's not a criminal mastermind. He's got the right people around him, and she isolated him.
Yeah.
So now it's actually on him, and he's somebody that has never had to do anything like that on his own.
Yeah, it's what happens when people that come from privilege never have to do anything. They just, the mistakes they make that are just so blatantly stupid, are just like, oh yeah, okay, you really don't think anything is going to happen to you. You don't think you're ever going to have accountability or anything like that you're going to pay for your mistakes. So you just do whatever you want, including, hey, I'm going to do the evil monologue now, explaining my whole plan, explaining all this kind of stuff, tell you that you can't hurt because it's connected to pheromones, and then still punch you in the nose because I can do whatever I want and nothing's going to happen to me. It's like that kind of, like, it's the whole idea of, like, in a horror movie, when someone goes upstairs, you're like, why would you do that? Why would you go upstairs? It's frustrating, right? It's that moment. Like, that was not me being like, that's a bad writing thing. I'm just like, that was a frustrating moment for me to watch, because I'm like, I know
you
exactly
were really
what's
rooting
happen
for
now.
him, eh?
No, I was not rooting for him. I was just like, it's frustrating because I'm like, this is so dumb that you're doing this. This is clearly, you're being played by Natasha, and I'm just waiting for the confirmation that she got everything that she needed from him. I was waiting for that switch, but it was just frustrating. Comes like, you're being dumb right now. You're being a dumb character, but no, don't get me wrong, not rooting for sure. I was just like, you're being dumb.
I was just like, I don't know how frustrated I felt. I was like, good, this is, you're getting what you deserve.
Yeah.
And it's basically just served to give us the badass Black Widow. You've been, peacocking or whatever this whole time, and I've just been.
Yeah, and she gets to say, like, oh my goodness, you think I can't take a hit? It's I feel like everyone likes that part in Batman Begins, where he's like, what, I can't take on 4 of your goons? Like, I just didn't feel it was that frustrating. I was like, this is her plan playing out exactly how she wants it to. But yeah, I like that scene. I liked the reveal. I think I already knew that Olga Kurylenko was Taskmaster because her name kind of stood out during the opening credits. And I was just like, well, that's gonna have to be someone big, because she's like a former Bond girl. She's been in a lot of things. So like, and I didn't know she was in this movie until this very moment. So I'm guessing she's Taskmaster. And then when they show the explosion and make a point of being like, well, I never confirmed the bodies because there was no bodies. I was like, oh, so then it's Straykov's daughter. But I was still like excited when they did the reveal. I was like, oh yeah, well, that's an actress I know. But I genuinely had no idea people were going to care that much that was. And I know they're not just upset about that reveal; they're upset about the character in general. But like, I liked everything to do with the villains, because it all comes into that thesis we're talking about the pain making you stronger, and I think they all play and highlight those things in different ways.
I wonder if it was intentional with like the Bond thing, because she was watching a James Bond movie. Natasha was watching a James Bond movie earlier, and also Rachel Weisz is married to Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
I don't know, like,
who starred with Olga Kurylenko in Solace or Quantum of Solace. So it's all connected.
I haven't really seen those movies, but a lot of people are comparing this to that type of movie.
Right. Well, I mean, spy movie, yeah, for sure.
Well, no, there is a James Bond. I can't remember which one, because I don't remember any James Bonds that aren't Pierce Brosnan or Daniel Craig.
So
Moonraker.
It's Moonraker.
Yeah,
that is officially what. Yeah, and that famously foreshadows the Skyfall scene. Not Skyfall the movie, but the actual Black Widow falling out of the sky doing a battle in the sky. Because there's a huge scene in Moonraker where that happens. So to me, I was like, oh, okay, you're foreshadowing. I see you, Marvel. I see what you're doing. So now, like, anytime I see a Marvel character watching media, I'm like, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing, man. It's fun though. It's meta.
Yeah, I enjoyed this movie. So then they get to the ground. They save the day. And I don't mean that facetiously. Like, this is a big deal that the information is out about the other Black Widows, so they can track them down. They can replicate this gas or whatever it is. And they've taken out Dreykov. But one thing I really did not get was, she's like, all right, you guys leave and I'll deal with Ross. But then they just cut to 2 weeks later. And I was like, it seems like something we should have seen.
I did not appreciate that.
I'm assuming it's like she was sent to jail or something and she still got away. But I was just like, I would have at least liked to see the conversation they had.
Correct. That to me was not well
done. But then she's in her Infinity War look, gets the jet,
gets the
and
vest.
Then we hear the Avengers music,
vest,
and she flies off.
Yep.
Is that the last scene before the post credits? Even if it isn't, it doesn't matter.
Yes,
That's the last scene.
Yes, it is. That's where she says, like, "Oh, look at here I am. Like, now I have 2 families and all that kind of." Right. Yeah, that is the final scene.
And there is some mirroring in there that like there's the part where she finds Yelena on the ground and she's like, we're both upside down, which and then there's like fireflies like in the beginning and that sort of thing, which was
they do that
nice.
Again.
Yeah, the firefly thing is really, really creepy because I can't take credit for this because other content creators pointed this out, but basically it was a mirror image of the lights on the map that Dreykov has. Every firefly is put in the same position to show that, and then now with them burning brighter, it was like now that they're free, it's burning. They're actually able to shine bright now. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's cool symbolism. I don't think I would have actually known that unless I had an image of the map next to the thing. But I'm like, that's cool. It's a nice little nod. Yes.
And that's kind of her legacy is those, like, I think that's like this movie is like a farewell to her character that we didn't really get because her death was kind of overshadowed by Tony's death. And I like that, that like her legacy is her both of her families, but also her legacy is helping to free, hopefully, all of these widows around the world, and potentially leading into another show or movie about that. And like I think that the movie in general did a good job of giving context to her character, the way that she has existed in the MCU, and giving her that legacy.
I 100% agree that this did a good job of kind of saying goodbye to her, but also, as you said, giving her more than just her sacrifice on Vormir, but this way of saving all these women who have been stolen away and robbed of their childhood. It felt very satisfying to me. Before we get into the post credits, have you seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or is that also something you're waiting on watching?
I have seen it. Yes.
Okay, so you recognized Val when she showed up.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I'm gathering that she's like creating a Suicide Squad, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess that's what she's doing because she's recruited. I was kind of bummed about that because I was like, "What? No, don't work with her. She's working with John Walker. He's the worst."
Fuck that guy.
Yeah,
but I mean, she is. Yelena's definitely working for the bad guys.
Yep. That to me is a very interesting revelation there. There's a lot about that final scene that's very, very interesting that a lot of people have broken down, added their speculations for. I don't want to give their kind of whatever clout or whatever it is, but I'm just like, to me, I'm just like, it does further cement that her government guy, to me at least, seems to be Teddy Ross. And that she's putting together his team, the Thunderbolts. That's what it feels like to me.
I
Oh.
don't really think she's working for him. I mean, she could end up. I'm always wrong with this. She seems to be way above his pay grade, if I'm
You know
being
what?
honest.
Yeah.
The
Fair.
way he gets duped at the beginning of the movie, I would feel bad for Val if she worked for someone who gets duped like that.
Okay, fair.
So I don't.
That's a good
I don't know
point.
about that. But
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, we haven't said it yet, but she basically gives Elena her next target, which is Hawkeye.
Hmm.
I don't care. I do not like
Setting up the Hawkeye Disney Plus series.
I liked him in Civil War, and that was pretty much it. It's good because she'll be in the Hawkeye TV show, so we'll see her again soon enough, I guess. But I was just like, I think people are so hung up on like, why did she lie about him killing him? Like, who cares? It's obviously just she wants to take him out.
Yeah,
Like, that's that.
Yeah, I like the idea of like, why did she lie? First of all, I'm more intrigued by how she knew the truth. I'm way more intrigued by how
She knows
knew.
everything.
Yeah, but I'm so much more intrigued by how she knew than the fact that she's twisting the truth to her gain. Because we always know that she's gonna twist the truth to
be clear
whatever.
though, they went off together and then only he came back. She doesn't actually have to know anything. She could just be like, he killed her. They went off together and then he came back alone.
I guess so. Sure.
Yeah. Well, I
That's
guess
the same
they
thing that
say-
happened with Thanos and Gamora. Nebula was like, he killed her. Like, or she didn't even say that. She just said, yeah, he came back alone. And it was like, yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know. You can make up your own story after that.
Okay, that's fair. That makes sense. That makes sense to me because that would have been like public knowledge that Natasha gave her life for the Soul Stone, right? My assumption is that they would have celebrated the Avengers in a day or something like that after they brought everyone back. Maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm reading into that. I don't know. Yeah.
Sorry, Michelle, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, I was basically just going to say, I think they're saving that. They must be saving that for the Hawkeye series because there's so much about her like they really didn't go into her relationship with Natasha's relationship with Hawkeye at all in the movie, or as much as I thought they would, which I was kind of glad about. But at the same time, it's, Yelena, I guess, doesn't know that they were like basically brother and sister, and that Natasha would not have wanted Yelena to go after him, but that's, I guess, being saved for, I presume, the Hawkeye show.
Yeah, my assumption. Oh, actually, since they are doing Kate Bishop, she might kill Clint Barton. I don't know.
Successful.
She might kill, but it does seem like they're setting it up for her to just get more information about her sister through Clint.
Right. And I agree with you, Michelle. Like, I like that he didn't show up because I think there's enough, if you pay attention throughout the whole MCU, that basically tells the whole story of Budapest. Like, okay, yeah, we know it's Dreykov's daughter. We know it's defecting to S.H.I.E.L.D. We know that she had to hide out with Clint in that subway station for like 48 hours and they play tic-tac-toe and everything like that. That's enough of a story. And we also know that through one of the Avengers movies that his mission was to kill her and he made a different call and that he was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. So to me, I'm like, okay, I don't need to see that. But will that actually be uncovered through dialogue in the Hawkeye show? Probably. It looks like it. But
I really hope not. I'm done with Budapest. Yeah, because really,
I'm done
to know about
Budapest
what happens on Vormir.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct about that. We are done with Budapest. I walk back my statement. I don't care about Budapest.
We don't need to keep going back to that. I think this, as you said, if you're paying attention throughout these movies, and then specifically this movie, even the way it looks like arrows were shot into her safe house. So obviously you're right about the whole, he was chosen to kill her. And then knowing the fact that they ended that whole time they're together and going off together, it's clear. I think you can extrapolate everything you just said. I don't need to hear that again.
The pieces have been put together. They're just, the jigsaw puzzles are just far apart. That's all. The pieces. One thing I will say, though, I do have a little bit of a speculation, and I want to put it out there to the both of you to see what you thought about this. But do you feel that Val is setting up the like darker adult Avengers to be somewhat similar to what The Boys is doing, where it's like, hey, we're going to control the public narrative through media and all this kind of stuff with these dark Avengers, but they're going to do evil stuff. And then what we have is the Young Avengers crowd being established through Disney Plus series, and then it's Young Avengers versus the Bad Avengers or something like that, eventually someday down the road. Do you feel like that may
I
have
don't
a
think it'll be
possibility
like
of
the
happening?
boys, but I'm sure the Young Avengers will have to step in
Right.
as this, whatever team this is
Right.
getting out of hand.
Yeah, because it's showing us clearly that this is a corrupt team that they're being put together and all this kind of stuff, and they're doing stuff that's, of course, not exactly of the moral standard that Captain America had held the Avengers to.
We tried.
Yeah, or tried to.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's definitely getting darker,
Mm-hmm.
which is exciting.
As she said, things are about to get weird.
Yep. Yep. I mean, we're seeing classic Avengers turn dark or being portrayed as dark now. Scarlet Witch being considered bad now. And then, of course, Hawkeye being painted out as Natasha's killer. I mean, they're spinning the narrative of who these Avengers are. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens going forward, especially with, you know, the entire MCU now. Because I feel like, especially, and we're not going to talk about this, but the mirroring kind of themes in Loki as well as Black Widow is very, very well timed, I think, too.
You are right. We will
Yeah.
not talk about that.
We will not be talking about that, but I can't wait to talk about that for sure.
But what we will
Yeah.
do is rate this movie very quickly, starting with you, Michelle.
Okay, my rating, I thought it would change and maybe be lower after our discussion, but it hasn't, which I'm glad about. I'm gonna give it a 9.
Excellent.
I'm going high.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm sitting at a 9 too. This is a solid movie. I don't care what anyone says. This is, yeah, I will fight people.
Nines all around. Nines all around.
Yes.
I'm also
Yeah.
I think it might be my favorite. Like I'm excited to on my next marathon to see how this movie fits in with the rest of it on a fresh viewing. And like it's so exciting. And I mean, I'm like the fact that it's taken so long for us to get these women-led superhero universe movies like taken as seriously as the male ones is annoying, but it's like it's an indescribable feeling being like going back to the first Wonder Woman movie, like seeing all the Amazonian warriors fighting, like that's an indescribable feeling, and everybody deserves to have that feeling. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but everybody deserves to have that feeling of feeling like you can see yourself in these big movies. And I like that it's a darker story. I like that it was like not all women superheroes have to be like girl power, you know, emotional, like, you know, I don't know, I'm saying a lot without saying
You're
much.
saying
but
Captain Marvel didn't quite meet the highs of Black Widow. I get it.
I get what you're saying, because to me Captain Marvel was toxic positivity of like you know what I mean, if that could be summed up. But this is like this is empowering. You know what I mean? That's to me the difference between the two movies. Like if I was to go back and rewatch, I'd be like, okay, that's toxic positivity versus this is just empowering in general.
Yeah, and just that we deserve both. We deserve all.
Yes.
We deserve as much variety of story as men get. And
That
so do people of
100%.
color, and so do people of different sexual orientations. And it's like, I'm glad that we're getting there slowly but surely.
Well, I'm glad we all enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we all gave it a 9 because I thought I was going to have the highest mark. But we all agree this was a great movie.
Yes, sir.
And I hope that people pay attention to it next time they watch it instead of just being like, well, there was no male characters I know in it. Because that's unfortunate. You're cheating yourself out of a good movie.
You're being a crummy people. Stop
You're
it.
just being crummy to yourself by not enjoying the movie for what it is.
You're entering a movie viewing experience with a lot of bias, and that's not cool. All right.
Well, what is cool is the That Shelf Podcast Network, which we are a part of. So please head on over to thatshelf.com. There's great podcasts like Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, a whole bunch of great stuff. So please head on over there. If you'd like to hear older episodes of our podcast, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. And Our Twitter is at TDS Spoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, whole bunch of things. So please go there, rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, your family, definitely your family, and your enemies, and hopefully don't break your nose. Michele, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at MicheleGardner and Twitter at MiCheley_. I think.
Well, the good news is, if people didn't catch that, I'm linking it below so you can get in touch with Michele as well. Ben, do you have anything?
No, that's it. Had a good
Excellent.
time. This has been great, as always. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.